Hello FlossTube, my name is LaDonna and this is my channel Sampling of Memories, and behind me, if you can see her laying down, is Tallulah, my standard poodle, who decided to join me for this video. So if she starts to bark or anything like that, I might have to stop, but right now she looks like she's just going to hang out with me, and that's okay. If you are joining me for the first time, welcome, and if you have been following me all along on this journey, thank you, and thank you for joining me again. I know there's a lot of floss tubes out there, and it's a lot of information and a lot of time that folks spend on these, and so I appreciate anyone who does take the time to spend some of their valuable time with me. So if you joined me on my last floss tube, which I think was my 10th one, you would have heard me talk about an upcoming retreat, which is the Midwest Cross Stitchers Retreat, and it is actually next weekend. So this time next weekend, I will be sitting in Minnesota, outside of Minneapolis, with some fellow stitchers and just enjoying a time of getting to know other stitchers and spending time on our hobby. So if you happen to be going to the retreat, please stop by and say hello. I would love to meet folks. That's one of the perks of going to the retreats and everything, is getting an opportunity to meet other stitchers and get to know them. Some of my closest friendships right now are from people that I've gotten to know from the guild that I'm a member of. So definitely, it's always nice to find like-minded folks that enjoy the same thing that you do, and they don't look like a deer in the headlights when you start telling them that you do needlework, which is what we normally get from folks. So anyway, enough about that. The other thing too is, if you have been following me for a while, you may remember I made the trip to Delaware for a sampler symposium that they did. It was at Biggs Museum in Dover, Delaware, it was a wonderful lecture, but guess what came in the mail today? They shipped the book that is based on the antique samplers that they had in the, oh my goodness, my brain is fried, in the exhibit. So this is a book done by Gloria, Seaman and Cynthia, Shank, Steinhoff. So if you're not familiar, Gloria, Seaman, I believe this is maybe the fourth one. I have to think about that a second. She has done, I think she did Ohio. No, that was Sue Studebaker. Excuse me. So it's been 3 that I can think of off the top of my head. So she has done Maryland, a DC, and now Delaware. So the books are really good reference material. So if you're into samplers or history of the different states, this is a good reference to have on hand. Cindy Steinhoff especially, she does come to our guild. She's a member, and she's a librarian, so she's a researcher. She is not a stitcher. She actually collects antique samplers for the genealogy research that she does and the history behind them. So if any of you are familiar with Barbara Hudson of Queenstown Sampler Designs, she's also in our guild. A lot of the samplers, some of the samplers that she reproduces are actually Cindy's. So they work very closely. They're very good friends. They collaborate on a lot of things. But Cindy does a phenomenal job on doing research, and she actually did the genealogy research for the first sampler reproduction that I did, which was Susanna Raymond. And she does a very good job of connecting, if there's 2, like in my case, Susanna Raymond, there were 2 girls that she narrowed down that could potentially have been the stitcher, and then she explained why she thought it was more likely one than the other. So she does a phenomenal job. So this book is a collaboration between her and Gloria, Seaman, and they always do a really good job. They're just beautiful to look at. I mean, the photography is phenomenal of the samplers. They will, talk about the girls. If there's more than one, that looks like the design influence is very similar, and they can trace it back to a teacher. They'll talk about the teacher. They'll talk about the materials that they may have used. So it's very interesting from a variety of standpoints. So you can learn a little bit about history and the lives of women during the periods that the samplers were made, as well as more information about the samplers. So I highly recommend, I'm a book person, so I highly recommend this one. I recommend all the ones that Gloria Seaman Allen has done. I'm gonna lay it down there so that it's on the bubble wrap. I didn't just put it on the floor. So the other thing too that I had talked about in my last video was my hoop. So I had wrapped my hoop, and this garnered a lot of comments and a lot of questions about how I did this. So that is what we're actually going to do now. Okay, so to wrap your hoop, you want to, well, first of all, the supplies. So you're going to want to have your hoop. So I'm going to use my larger one. You want to have some thread. This is just quilting thread just because I like using it when I hand sew things together, just because it's thicker and it seems to be sturdier. You would want to have a needle, so there is a little needle in here. If you have a curved needle, that would be better, but this will work as well. You want to have your bias tape. So this is 3/8 of an inch, I believe. I think that's what 0.875 is. I'm not a math person, so this is what I used. It worked. I would recommend a needle threader. This is one that I have that it makes it really easy to use the hand sewing thread. I wouldn't recommend it though for your embroidery threads or your cross stitch threads because they're thicker than the needle that will work in this. This is really designed for hand stitching. Double-sided tape, if I didn't say that already. And then you want to have a good pair of sewing scissors for fabric. I mean, you can use regular, but I have them, so I might as well use them. And then I would recommend having a pair of regular paper type of scissors in case you need to, if you wanted to cut the plastic off of this. And I think, oh, my little wonder clip. So this is really handy when you are wrapping and you've got your bias tape. So what I did is I took it off of the cardboard because, and I may have to piece this together, but that's okay. I can do that. This just makes it very easy to wrap around instead of letting it hang loose, because when you get the momentum going, you want to keep going and you want to keep the same amount of tension so that this stays nice and tight around the rim of the hoop. So this makes it really easy because you can keep it in your hand. So that's my big tip, is to do that, because it will make it much, much easier. So we're going to start with the double-sided tape. So you're going to want to take a piece. I know this is a pretty good size piece here, but that's okay because this is wide enough to handle it. So the way this is a hoop that goes into a stand. So you're going to want to start next to, in this case, this piece right here because it's there. If you're using a larger hoop and you don't have anything, then just figure out where you want your beginning to be. But I'm just going to put the double-sided tape right there on the inside and make sure it's stuck in there really good. And then I'm just going to take, and I'll have to turn this around because I won't be able to do it this way. I'm going to take my bias tape, and the angle that I want it to go at is going to be the direction. So how I start this piece here is going to determine how my bias tape is wrapped around the entire hoop, because this is going to set the direction. So I cut my bias tape at an angle to give it a nice clean line. I put it right here to the edge of the hoop, and then when I twist this around, if you notice, since the bias tape is folded over, you actually have a faint line. I know you probably can't see it as well as I can, but that will be my guideline, so to speak, for when I do my wrapping. So it really is this easy. I'm going to go ahead and, of course, now it wants to move around on me. There we go. Didn't have it quite in there tight enough, and it doesn't. There we go. All right, so I just repositioned it a little bit. And that first piece you're going to wrap around, And what I did is, as I said, I followed the one. You also want to make sure you're paying attention to the thickness as you're going around. You don't want it to be real thick, because what it will do is it will affect how your outer hoop fits onto the inner hoop. So I literally just wrap it. I'm going to wrap a few of these so you can see the pattern that I'm getting, and you'll also see too why it's handy to have the Wonder Clip here. So as I'm wrapping, I'm also pulling that a little bit so you can, now the sun is going to come in. Hang on a second. Okay, so this is what it looks like so far, and I'm trying to do this, but it's gonna be kind of noisy. So, but I want you to see what I'm looking at, because I think it's helpful. I'm gonna do the best I can, so to show you how I'm doing the wrap. But it is really hard with the camera here. So hopefully that gave you somewhat of an idea of how it looks and feels. I guess I need a GoPro. Maybe that would help. But you see how I'm overlapping and making use, but also checking the spread here so that it's not getting too thick, and then you'll end up having to redo it. But what's making this seem really hard, much harder than it really is trying to make sure that the camera is picking it up. Okay, so I have the whole hoop wrapped, and as you can see, I pretty much kept the same pattern all the way around, and you do want to spread it out a little bit as you're working with it so that it fans a little bit more. But as you can see, it's not extra thick or anything like that. Nothing is, it's not bunched up in any location, and if it does, you can work, you know, it's loose enough to where you can manipulate it to move a little bit if you need to. So now that I've finished doing all of the looping, I'm here at the end. So all I'm going to do now is take up this last piece, and I want to cross over the previous piece. So I'll show you what that looks like. So see how I took it basically straight up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this a little bit and then tuck it under and then stitch it to the piece that's underneath. I would imagine you could use a piece of double-sided tape there too if you wanted to, but up to you. Actually, I am going to use a piece of double-sided tape because it'll just hold it in place so that I can stitch it. The only thing is you want to make sure that the piece that you use is really small and that it's not going to go where your needle will need to be stitched into the fabric or the bias tape below. And then this is where the clip also comes in handy. So I can go ahead and thread my needle. Okay, so when I do my needle, I actually like to have the thread doubled just because that's just how I am. So there is something my mom did teach me as far as doing a knot for your needle. She always called it a quilter's knot, and I don't know if that's the official name or not, but you take your needle and you put your thread. In this case, it looks like it's in front of me, on top of the needle, but to you it's going to look like it's behind the needle. Put that tail underneath your thumb, and then if you twist around the needle a few times, what you can do is do it loose. You do the twisting loosely, but when you pull it through, it gives you a nice knot. Now, this is not. It's I knot my threads when I stitch. I always put the knot on top so that I can run the threads below. So I use this technique quite a bit, but it's really quick and fast, and you just, you know, you can make the knot as thick as you want. I like it thick because then it doesn't pull through the linen. But all I'm going to do now is stitch this piece right here, and as I said, a curved needle would work much better than this, but I have it pinned with the Wonder Clip to hold it in place, and then I'm going to put a few stitches right here so that I don't have to worry about it. And the knot really doesn't matter on the, because I mean this is, it'll get flattened out anyway as you're using it, so it's not that big of a deal. It's really just to secure this piece, this last piece with the one below it, so you don't have to worry about it moving around on you while you're stitching. The other piece, the tape is covered up, so and I don't have two ends really meeting with the way I did it, so I don't have to worry about that. And this doesn't have to, you know, this side of it doesn't have to be pretty because no one's gonna see it but you. So now I'll just tie this off and clip it, and that's pretty much it for wrapping your hoop. Now if you're like me and you want both the inner and the outer hoop wrapped, then you're going to do basically the same thing I just did on both, and then you're done. But like I said, what I like about it is it does make your fabric very taut. So I will show you with my other one because I haven't done the outer one yet. So I will take what I have on here off. All right, so as you can see, this one I have both of them looped or wrapped, I guess is a better term. And then when you put your linen on, and this is a nice new piece of linen, which I'll take off, but it'll be good for display. For demoing, you just line it up and put your hoop on top. And as you can see, it's already smoothing out quite a bit. So it gives you a nice, tight fabric. And you don't get the markings on your linen, which is nice as well. Well, not as much. You're always going to get markings on your linen, but as you can see, it's pretty tight. So that's pretty much how you wrap your hoop. All right. I think that covers pretty much everything I was going to talk about. As always, thank you so much for spending time with me. I hope this was helpful information and something that you try yourself. Let me know what you think. If you do try it out, if you have any trouble, if you have any questions, send me a message and I'll do my best to answer them. You can usually find me here when I do my floss tubes on my channel and Sampling of Memories. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, pretty much Instagram or Facebook is usually where I'm most active, quite honestly. So all you have to do is search Sampling of Memories and that should pull up. That should work for all social media platforms and that should help you find me. How's that? Thanks so much for spending some time with me. I do appreciate it. And as I said, I hope this is helpful. And until next time, I hope you have plenty of time to sit back, relax, and stitch.